What I like to do now is to share those two observations. Share the couple of diagrams with you and leave you with a definition of love that I hope is going to be very helpful, maybe stick with you through life. The first of our observations simply goes like this. The typical American couple builds their relationship on a fatal attraction. They build their relationship on a fatal attraction. Let me explain. Let's use the first diagram, which would be 3 concentric circles. Let me explain the 2 outer circles first. The first circle, we'll entitle it body. You see, our whole being is made up first of a body. We have a physical side to us. Now, the physical side is the number one attractant of men to women. When men look to women and say, who am I interested in? The first thing is the physical. It happens to be that man is designed by God to be stimulated by sight. And so it is a natural, normal thing to say attractive or not. And so that becomes an important thing to a guy. Is she pretty to me? She may not be pretty to someone else, that's fine. But do I see her to be attractive? Then that becomes something that is pursued. Now, one thing that I noted about the body is, in my first observation, was that the body is at its peak, it's at its very best, what, late 20s, mid 30s at best? I mean, I start thinking back, when did my metabolism begin changing? But certainly when you hit 40, it is on the decline, right? Key word, decrease. I mean, guys and gals, men and women will all admit the older you get, the harder it is, right? The wrinkles come, the looks begin to fade, you know what I'm talking about. No need to go further. Now, what about the second part of man's being? It's the personality. Men and women have personalities, and those personalities are important to us. In fact, women are more attracted to the personality than they are to the physical. Now, the woman's going to be concerned that, well, is he cute? Is he attractive? Yeah, kind of. But the real issue is, what's their personality? And when we talk about personality, we're talking mind, emotion, and will. That all brings about a unique personality. By the way, if you don't believe what I'm saying about the ladies more attracted to the personality than the physical, look around at a few of the couples that we have here. I've been observing when you've walked in, and I say, point made right there. We've got some of the cutest girls here with some of the most unattractive guys that I've seen in a long time. I mean, it's a mess. It just happens that way. Well, what about the personality? Do you know that the personality, about equal to the body, begins its decline at the same ages? I remember as a young dad, my first son, name is Matt. Now, most dads, when they play games with their son, try to let the sons win. You know, they want to build their confidence and encourage them and so forth. Not me, man. I'm going to whip my kid at anything I can. He comes up to me, just a little fella, and he says, hey, Dad, let's play memory. Do you remember the game memory? Sure you do. You know, you turn all these cards and okay, I think this one and this one, and you flip them up. Do they match? If they do, you got you a pair, and you keep score that way. He comes up with his box, and I'm going, kid, I'll kill you. Are you kidding me? I'm not dumb. And I remember him going flip, 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 and he's taking 2, 2, 2, 2, and I'm getting one every now and then. I go, wait, how you doing this? He said, well, if you remember, then when they turn up, you just remember where they are. And I began to realize, my mind is already in decline. When I'm talking to people my age, and we talk about memorizing parts of the Bible and verses of the Bible, guys my age begin to say, I can't memorize anymore. I used to do that pretty well. I can't do that anymore. What are they saying? The mind is in decline, right? I'll take something like the will. We have a little statement, so you cannot teach an old dog new tricks, right? Meaning the will gets kind of firm and set, doesn't bend so readily. How many ladies have I heard through the year talking about their husbands. You know, when I married him, he was so much fun, and he was funny, and he was ready to go out and do stuff and enjoy it. Now he's just an old bump on the log. I'm telling you, he just sits there and reads his paper and has his grumbles, mumbles, you know. What happened to his personality? Well, it is in decline, right? And begin to realize, you know, the reality is the typical American couple builds their relationship on a fatal attraction when you deal with just the physical or the personality. Let's put it into what we call the dating arena of our life. Here's how it typically happens. Let's look at a second diagram. Let's take Jennifer. We'll just use her as an example here. Whoever Jennifer is, she's beginning her dating career now, all right? She's a young student, and so she's attracted to someone, and so you see the present, and it moves toward the future. And so Jennifer begins to date Josh. And I happened to walk by one day, and I hear her talking to Josh, and I hear her say, "Josh, I love you." I hear that and I say, wow, young age to be in love. But more power to her, you know. But about 2 or 3 months later, she breaks up with Josh. Breaks up. I mean, he kind of spins up, you know. The relationship is over. It's spent. And maybe because as she views him now, well, he's just kind of a $10 bill, you know. Not that million. It spins up quickly. And by the way, do you know a $10 bill spins just as well as the first 10 of a million. It feels the same, it just runs out. And so it's not long, maybe, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 months later, I happen to see that she is now dating Trey. Now, I walk by and I hear her say, "Trey, I love you. Oh, I love you with all of my heart." I go, "Ooh, well, maybe." So I happened to catch her alone a little bit later. I said, "Can I just ask you a question? Did I hear you tell Josh about 3 months ago that you loved him? And now I hear you telling Trey that you love him. How is that?" She goes, "Oh, man, I was so immature. It was puppy love. You know, I didn't understand love, but now I know." Oh, okay. But what happens? She breaks up with Trey a few months later. For some reason, he just spins up. You know, it's gone now. Maybe because only a $10 bill. And then she begins a new dating relationship. It happens to be with a guy named Bill. And so she begins this relationship with Bill. And, you know, I'm sitting over there watching, and I happen to kind of eavesdrop a little bit. And I overhear her say, "Bill, I love you." I go, wow, the third guy she's loved. So I say, "Can I ask you, Jennifer, did I hear you say that you love Bill?" "Oh, yes, we are in love." I say, "Really? Didn't I hear you say that about Trey also just a few months ago?" "Yeah, I really thought that was love, but now I know the difference. This is the real deal." I say, "Oh, okay." But what happens? You know, she breaks up because he's only a $10 bill. Okay, so then we move on. She begins to date a little further, and the next person she begins to date is named Kyle. She starts this relationship with Kyle. Now, she happens to be 22, 3, 4, I don't know. But she's in an age now where marriage becomes very typical. And so she ends up getting married. You tell me, what is the difference between Kyle and Bill and Trey and Josh? Let me tell you, the only difference is one of them happens to be at an age, maybe a more mature age, but nevertheless at an age where marriage happens. And let me tell you, if she got tired of Josh and Trey and Bill, I'll bet my bottom dollar. Not that she'll necessarily get a divorce, but it won't take long before she'll say, this relationship is not what I had hoped it would be. The reason is because the typical American couple builds their relationship on a fatal attraction. Let's look at this second observation. Second observation reads like this: the greatest hope for a couple is to build their relationship on a spiritual attraction. On a spiritual attraction. Totally different thing. I was at a conference. I'll never forget. It was a student conference. I was a student. And I was still into the thought that, the best catch of a female is the one that's the most attractive and has the best personality. I mean, at this point in my life, that's all I knew. So I happened to be at this conference, and there was a speaker there, and it was a 6-week conference out in California, and I was so impressed with this speaker. This guy was a big, strong, athletic-looking man. I would say maybe in his 80s now, but in great health. In fact, word was out that he was a Golden Gloves boxing champion in his day, that he stayed in great condition and health. And so we just all were so impressed with this older man. And he kept talking to us saying, students, I love being here with you. I love being your teacher, but I'm missing my bride. I just wish I had my bride. And he kept calling her bride. And I thought, oh, he robbed some cradle somewhere, got this young lady stashed away, and no wonder he's excited, One day he says, hey, guys, guess what? I just found out. My bride is going to fly out here and meet me, and I'm going to have the opportunity to introduce her to all of you, and vice versa. And so we were all, thrilled with that. We were looking forward to meeting her. I remember the day when he said she'd come, and we sat with anticipation. We were already in the room. And here comes walking in. There was a big stage and some steps walking up, and here comes this man with his bride. If he was 80, she was 110, as far as I could tell. She was elderly looking. He wasn't. But, she just appeared so much older. And the minute we saw her, I know my impression was, wow, that's his bride? Now, she had a hard time getting up the steps. He would help her. And she took one step at a time, and she came up, and I remember she was kind of shoulders bent over and turned around, and I'm telling you, he stood there next to her with a grin from ear to ear. He said, students, meet my bride. And I'm going, huh? This is the bride that you're so excited? And I couldn't help but think, how does he get excited about waking up to her? I did. That's my honest opinion. Was she physically attractive? No. She didn't look like she had a whole lot going on personality-wise at that moment. She was pretty far down the line, And I'm going, he is starstruck over this woman. How does that happen? Then this is what he said. Probably because of a question being asked out of the audience. But he said, guys, I used to think I was in love with my wife when we got married, and certainly we were married. We were in love. But he said, I think the first 5 years of our marriage, maybe my love for that woman doubled. I don't know. And then maybe the next 3 or 4 years, I think my love doubled. And now these many, many, many years we've been married, I declare, I think I wake up every day and love her more by the day. And I heard that and I said, I want that. I want that kind of relationship. How do you get that kind of relationship? I did the chaplaincy for the tennis tour for numbers of years, maybe 10 years or so. And I got to go to the Grand Slam tournaments and others as well, but go to the Grand Slam tournaments all over the world and to be there. And I got to locker in the locker room with the players and eat with them and get to know them and this, that, and the other. And I had the opportunity of watching some pretty interesting things in the dressing rooms. I remember in the dressing room, you'd see a player come in, some of them high profile, very big name, world-known players, and they would be playing singles and they would lose in the quarters or whenever. And I have seen rackets thrown from one end of the dressing room to the other, smashed against this, that, and the other, the foulest of language you could ever imagine. And they talk about how stupid they were when they hit the ball. If I had just done this, and you just see them lose it over a singles loss. They're out of the tournament. But it's interesting. There were a few occasions where you'd see one of those players who was actually playing doubles as well. That's not as common. But some do, and they just want to keep, moving and so forth, have some other match play and all, and so they play some doubles as well. Well, doubles is a very secondary thing. It's not a big deal. If they're still in the singles draw, they could come in and the same player could come in having lost their doubles match and come in laughing and saying, man, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done. Did you see me? We lost that match because I did so and so. No big deal. What are they saying? They're saying, I've got the number one. I've got what counts. And this is what I began hearing from those with whom I was talking and asking. They introduced a third dimension of our being. I was introduced to a text in the Bible, 2 Peter chapter 1. This is how this particular text reads. It goes like this. Now, for this very reason also, applying all diligence, in your faith supply moral excellence, and in your moral excellence, knowledge, and your knowledge, self-control, and your self-control, perseverance, and then it adds godliness, brotherly kindness, and Christian love. And the words are, it's like an add-on. It's like a building process. And then it says, if these qualities are yours and are increasing, and that word just stood out to me. I went, increasing. There's a part of our being that actually increases. If these, and talking about qualities, are yours and are increasing, they'll render you neither useless nor unfruitful in the true knowledge of Jesus Christ. And if we go back to the diagram with the three circles, that's the inner circle. It's the spirit, it's the soul of that person, where God's Spirit literally indwells man's spirit. Becoming a Christian is not, I'm going to now live like a Christian. Now I'm going to determine to believe like a Christian. All those things will come, but it's an encounter with God. It's a relationship. It's a love relationship where His Spirit indwells our spirit and creates these qualities that we need to find relationships built upon, because they are increasing. They get better and better and better over time. That's what these guys were excited about. They said, I got number one. You see, I've got the Spirit, and it's my number one. It was the primary attractant. It was a spiritual attraction, and it just keeps getting better and better and better and better. Oh, yeah, I lost the doubles match. I'm losing the physical. She's not so attractive, or he doesn't have the personality he used to have. But you know what? Look at the soul of that individual. Look at the spirit. It just gets better and better and better with time. And the relationship gets better and better and better as well. That led me to a definition of love that I cannot tell you how well it served me through the years in my marriage and other relationships as well. The definition goes like this. Love is a commitment. You see, I thought love was an emotion. I remember asking my dad, as a youngster, Dad, how do you know you're in love? He said, you just know it, you'll feel it. No wonder when that feeling was gone and it was created for another woman, he said, I have to do what I have to do because love is a powerful thing and I have to follow what I really love. Well, no, love is not simply an emotion, it is a commitment. But secondly, it's based on the will of God. Very important to know that. God directs us in areas, He says, now here's where I want your commitments. And then thirdly, it's undergirded most often by an emotion. The emotions, are they there? Yes, they're a real part. In fact, they're driven by the commitment. You commit to something and emotions begin to come for that, for which God has said, yes, that's where I want you to be committed. Do you know, it began to make sense to me how God's Word could say, love your enemies. I said, well, if they're your enemies, you don't love them. No, you can, because it's a commitment based on the will of God. And even as you do that, watch how you can even create from time to time a real emotion for that enemy. Certainly where it says, husbands, love your wives. It says, well, it's a commitment based on the fact that I say you should. It's best for you. It's best for her. The whole thing works out better. Just love. And watch the emotion that undergirds it over time. Love is a commitment based on the will of God, most often undergirded by an emotion. Do you know, when I realized that definition of love, I said, I've got to make sure that my relationship with Carol is really based on the right things. I had already examined my own heart, and I knew that my love for her was based primarily on that inner circle of life, the Spirit. I saw those qualities in her, beginning with faith, a true faith. She was a young Christian. It wasn't that she was that old in the Lord or that mature, as we would call it. But you know what? I could tell that her faith was deeply rooted. There was a moral excellence developing in her life, that she wanted to do the right things for the right reasons. And then I began to look at things like perseverance. You know, perseverance is the ability to keep going when you want to stop. Or self-control. Man, self-control is just the very opposite of that. You know, self-control is to stop when you really would rather keep going. Or things like godliness. I saw her reflecting who God was. I began to see in her life things like kindness, brotherly kindness, and then this thing called love, the apex of all. You know what? I saw an unconditional love in her life because God would direct her to love. Not because she felt it, because she believed it was the right thing to do. Not because she was going to get something in return. Now, granted, she was not fully mature in those areas, but I saw that these qualities were hers and were increasing. And I said, therefore, I think she is the right one for me because I believe God would have me to marry her. But you know what? I didn't know whether she would have the understanding of love and that was her motivation. I remember driving to her hometown, and I was so nervous because I knew I was going to ask her one question, and the answer to that question would dictate whether I felt we should pursue the relationship further or not. I remember asking her, Carol, do you love me? She said yes, and then I had to ask the question that scared me. What do you mean when you say you love me? Why do you love me? Do you know, she said it in different ways, but she focused on the inner circle as her rationale for love and why she sensed that there was something there for us of kindred heart to work together, to grow together as Christians and so forth. And I said, this is potential right here. Because we're both focused with the primary area being the spiritual, which is the attractant that brings a couple into the best potential for a future relationship. You know, those other two areas, the physical as well as the personality, they're legitimate. I would look at those as very valid as to whether I want to be with somebody, to pursue a relationship. But the point is simply this. They're legitimate if they're secondary. But when they become primary, hear this, when they become primary, they are fatal. They are fatal.